Hey everyone, I hope you're having a good first week at school and that the work hasn't been overwhelming, although there's obviously no denying that it is your senior year and kind of getting you ready for college next year and whatnot, that it is going to be a push. So hopefully if we haven't already, we'll find the sweet spot between a push and too much and live in that place. So today I just want to kind of begin with our very first lecture of the year where we're just going to be kind of introducing some very basic concepts of government. And I know I've already made the comparison between government and psychology, but I want to kind of hit that again because I think government is a content based class. And as someone who has spent the week trying to teach my children who somehow got summered over the last 4 months, which is a verb that I'm using now. And they have the attention spans of ADHD gerbils anymore. Um, I have tried to drive home for them all week that for something like math, like elementary school math, which builds on itself, that the more you can understand and master the really easy stuff, like your times tables and mental math and things like that, the easier everything gets as it gets harder. And I think it's the same for government, right? Like a good solid understanding of the basic stuff is going to drive you forward in this course because you're going to continue to layer in and use these concepts all year long, which is a really nice part about this course. So let's go ahead and begin, and let's take a look at the first question here, which is what are the key functions of government? So I think before we answer that question and we talk about these key functions of government, I want to go ahead and define what government is, right? So what constitutes a part of government or government in and of itself and what doesn't? And so the definition that we're going to use for our course is any institution that makes policy for society. So basically any like the postal service is a part of government. They set postage rates and they set regulations on what you can mail and what you can't mail. And those regulations are basically another way of saying policy. Same thing of City Hall that sets, you know, I don't know, police budgets or to take down the Drake power plant and transition to alternative energy sources. That's policy. And so any institution that makes public policy for all of society is government. It's technically government. And so in our course, we're really going to focus on the big four parts of government in AP US government and politics. And the big four pieces of government that we're going to really draw our attention to is the United States Congress, made up of the House of Representatives and the United States Senate, the president, and kind of the entire executive branch, the court system, ranging from appellate courts to district courts to the United States Supreme Court, and then something that's a little bit less clear, I think, to most people, which is the federal bureaucracy, which is the hundreds, if not thousands, of organizations ranging from the EPA to the FCC to the FAA and getting on airplanes. That's the bureaucracy. And so as you can see from these four, we're really living in the federal government level. And we're going to make that distinction a couple different times early in our course that if you became a poli sci major in college, you are also going to study state government as well and the difference and the interaction between state government and federal government. But our AP course is really going to function and focus on the federal government. And so when we look at back to the question at hand on this slide, what are the key functions of government? Let's go ahead and just take a look at if we were to dump all governments into a giant pile, all governments from around the world, from the government of the United Kingdom to India to China to a local regional government in I don't know, where do you want to go with? Let's go with Sri Lanka, right? We look and see that all governments around the world maintain similar functions, and the key functions are the same, which is providing for a defense. When we look at the United States government, obviously our national defense budget is ginormous. That is a part of the function of the United States government that no doubt the United States takes super seriously.
and so seriously to the extent that they're paying upwards of two-thirds, or approaching two-thirds of $1 trillion, 650 billion a year, to fund the national defense. National defense is a key function of government, whether you're Canada or India and the United States. Continuing on, governments around the world, whether local or regional or at the federal and national level, also provide goods and services to its people. And so when we look here on goods and services, we are going to be talking about things like roads, or clean water, and the sewer systems, and schools, and police officers, and firefighters, and all the many different goods and services provided. Parks. Some of you may have heard that Panorama Park is getting a massive facelift. That was the El Paso County city government looking at its responsibility and key function and saying, well, that's a good or a service that we can provide the people of Southeast Colorado Springs, and that's our role. And so national defense, public goods and services. And when we look at public goods and services, we also want to kind of break these down and take a look at the difference between something called collective goods, meaning something that is available for everyone without access. And we can maybe argue about hospitals in general, but the fact of the matter is if you show up at UC Central or Memorial Hospital sick and you go into the emergency room, they're going to care for you. Right? It is something that is a basic function and available to everyone, whether you are homeless or rich. And so collective goods are available to every member of a society. Right? Everybody can go to schools, everybody can go to the hospital. Everybody can use the roads and turn on a tap and get clean water. Infrastructure like that. These are collective goods. And I think that brings up the second function here, which is basically non-collective goods. These are goods that the government definitely provides, but makes stipulations as to who can get it. And so, obviously, the easiest answer here is public universities, right? Like CU Boulder or UCCS or UNC. These are state like colleges, partially funded by Pell Grants, which is the federal government money giving to colleges as well, but they're not available to everyone, right? Like you have to get into them. You have to have met certain metrics. You have to apply. Yeah, the same thing would be certain types of medical care, right? You can go to the hospital as a collective good, but other medical cares more specifically are non-collective goods. Moving on, I also want to kind of focus a little bit on the key function of government, which is to preserve societal order. And this is a slightly different side of the coin from national defense. I usually think of defense and the Secretary of Defense and the Pentagon, for example, as being outward facing, right? It's protecting the United States from foreign aggressors. But we also have a certain amount of internal aggressors. And so the government is also charged with preserving the order within society. And so some of this is very controversial and very much in the news lately of how we do it. And I think like that's the debate as a democratic or representative government, right? We have a say in how that looks. But at the end of the day, like the government provides a National Guard and police forces and DHS services, which is child protective services, jails, etc., in order to preserve and protect property and order and general public safety. Now, do they always do a great job of it? No, I think that's pretty clear that there's obviously some problems going on in that, but it doesn't change the fact that that is a key function of government. Now we get into the more abstract parts of this key functions of government, which is that the government also is tasked with socializing the young. And when we think about socializing the young, right, we're talking about children. And you can probably guess what the predominant way of socializing the young, and maybe I'll pause here and just give you some think time. What do you think the number one way and place that the government socializes the young in? Meaning to socialize someone is to some extent make them sociable, right? Instill the values, instill beliefs, and kind of guide them into seeing the world a certain way. That's all socialization. And so the government socializes the young through schools, right? If you thought schools, you would be correct. There's a reason why our government has landed on the funding and providing of public education. We believe that an educated population is better for the economy, it's better for public safety, it's better for public order, right? We are a more functional and more productive and safer society when people in our society aren't idiots and uneducated. Again, we could argue about the effectiveness of this um, delivering this key function, but the fact that it is one is undebatable. And so, they do that through schools. They also do it through simple things like, why does the government fund massive Fourth of July firework displays in Washington D.C. or why does the government basically give grants to community organizations that are running things on Memorial Day and Labor Day and various national holidays. It's all because that money is seen as the government as fulfilling one of its core functions, which is to socialize the young and make of them citizens, build knowledge and pride in the nation. And then the last one is one that obviously nobody really likes to pay, but everyone really likes to use, right? Everyone likes to kind of grumble and complain about taxes, but at the end of the day, everyone likes what taxes provide, right? Which is it cleans up the streets and gives trash collection, and then you have police officers and firefighters and roads that aren't riddled with potholes, although that is debatable here in Colorado. And we like the fact that we use taxes to make sure our air quality doesn't suck when it's not forest fire season. We love the goods that taxes provide. We don't really like to pay them, but collecting them in order to provide those goods is a key function of government. And so when we look here, the key functions of government, I want to kind of pause here and say, leave you with our first question of today. I want you to go ahead and just answer this in your notebooks, and then you'll just actually you'll answer it on the sheet that I'll provide in Google Classroom here that goes along with this, which is of the five major functions of government. Go ahead and pause here for a moment. Just hit pause and kind of discuss what you believe the most important function of government is. Question number one, what is the most important function of government in your eyes? Question number two, which of the key functions of government have you benefited the most from? Okay, so just go ahead and again pause, answer those questions on the worksheet provided, and then we'll go on to the next slide. So again, our course is government and politics, and government is probably the 75% of our course, right? Like how does Congress work? How do the courts work? How do laws work? How does the Constitution work, right? How does Supreme Court case law get applied to give like lower judicial courts their decision-making powers? Um, Government is the majority of our course, but politics is the abstract part that some of you are really going to geek out on, particularly those of you like video games and strategy. Like politics is kind of the dirty part of US government that is both incredibly interesting and entertaining and also sometimes a little bit stinky. And so what is politics? And at the heart of it, I'm going to provide again kind of an abstract definition. So when I talk about politics, essentially what we're talking about is answering the question of who gets what, when, and how. And so knowing that resources are finite and attention is finite and we don't have unlimited amounts of each, we're really looking at how do people figure out whether Colorado gets more funding than Nebraska, and do they get attention on this issue but not this issue? And so essentially with politics, it's the back and forth and the scheming and the behind the scenes and the maneuvering and the strategy that goes into figuring out who gets what, when, and how. And again, I'm not going to lie, that's an abstract definition, but we're going to keep at it and I think it'll become more clear, right? And when we talk about the who here and the who gets what, we're talking about voters, like citizens, candidates, political parties, who wins, who loses, who gets the beneficiary of certain laws, who doesn't. And then when we talk about what, like voters get what, we're talking about benefits and burdens.